Today we're back with the budget kits for 1.0 and we're going to go right from the beginning for a basically barely playable kit all the way up to the high tier stuff that you should probably be aiming for once you get to about level 20 or 30 or so. So let's start right away with an empty guy, and we are going to do different things depending on whether we've got a gamma or an alpha, but we'll come to that a little bit later. So what are the things that you absolutely need to have when you're going to go into a raid? So we're going to start off at the top, move down to the bottom. So on the earpiece, when you first load in, you only have a couple of traders available to you, which is basically Therapist and Ragman. So this is quite different to other previous patches because normally you have all the traders by Jaeger right from the word go, and Ref of course. And that normally allows you to buy lots of different things, whereas at level 1, you can't buy anything, you can't even buy any guns. So first things first, you're going to want to extract out of interchange for Ragman's first mission, and that basically unlocks Skier, and Skier is the first trader that we can actually buy a lot of useful stuff from, including this, which is the M32 headset. Now this is quite expensive, and at the beginning you should probably just use whatever headset you have. Any headset is better than no headset, and this headset actually isn't the one that I wanted to recommend for people right at the beginning, because that one is over on Prapor, which is the GSSH, because it's just that little bit less expensive. But until you get access to Prapor, you're going to have to buy the M32 from Skier. This is more important than any helmet, and one of the issues with the helmets is that you just can't really buy them at the beginning that don't block the earpiece, and it's just not worth it. You need to be able to hear where people are coming from, and that works both for scavs and for other players. In terms of a face cover, you'll just be using a basic balaclava like one of these guys, and we're not going to want to wear anything in the eyewear section either because it doesn't do enough to actually help you. All eyewear does in this game is reduce the brightness of flashlights, and the basic ones only reduce it by about 10% or so, and I still need to test whether there's still the bug that glows in the fog, so for the time being it's easier just to not take them at all. Now in terms of body armor, we're not going to have much choice. At the beginning you may well have a couple of different pieces of armor, but if you want to just buy something from the traders, then you're going to have to go and get something from Ragman to begin with, and the earliest one is the Packer, which is the most expensive one I actually don't really like. Once you've unlocked Skier, then you have the ability to buy the second one, which is this, the Module 3M armor, and this is white, so it is going to make you a little bit more visible, but if you have a rig over the top, then it won't be so bad. And then finally, once you've got Prapor unlocked, then you can buy this guy, which is the 6B2 body armor in Flora, and this is the cheapest, and the only real disadvantage is it doesn't have side soft armor, so it stops your stomach getting blacked out when you get hit by a shotgun or something like that. But to be honest, I don't think it really makes all that much difference. You're probably just going to die anyway if you're getting shot in this kind of area with most rounds, because this is only going to protect you from pistol bullets, and not even that if you're getting shot with PST, which a lot of the bears start with on their account. So just go with this because it's basically a throwaway armor to stop you getting shotgun from the front. It'll come back in insurance, so make sure you do insure all these things because other players aren't going to pick them up unless they're real down on the like scav, and they may well have spawned in with something actually better than this, and then just take it from there. So the Packer is probably the earliest and bare minimum one that we can get access to, so we're just going to stick that on for now. Now we need to have a tactical rig of some kind, and all of these are over on Ragman. And have a look at his selection. The cheapest one that you can get access to is one of these guys, the Bank Robber chest rig. Now, when I was doing budget kits previously, I used to use these all the time, but I realized that this is actually a bit of a false economy, and really you should upgrade to this, the CSA. I've been using the CSA for quite a few years now because you get 2 extra slots here for only 3,000 rubles. And the reason why this is good is because when you buy one of these and put it on you, this is really, really efficient in raid, because not only do you get the 2 slots to put something else in, and by the way, this is really useful if you have 1x3 mags. When you have it in the normal inventory, it only takes up 6 slots. This means that when you have a bag or something like we're going to look at in a second, and you find a bigger rig out in the wild, what you can do is you can put this rig down into your bag and you can put their rig on, and because this only takes up the rig slot, you can end up getting an extra couple of squares out of this, because this is the amount of space it's taking up, and you get these extra items. So you can take 10 items out in the space of 6, which if you're running budget bags is very important. So as for the bags then, again, let's go back to Ragman. Basically, you're going to want to pick one up in raid, but the worst case scenario, if you're really down on your luck, is this, the tea bag. We'll stick that on just for the time being. This is what I meant before, so you can put the CSA, you fill this with stuff, swap all of your active items like mags and whatever else, meds, over into a different rig if you find one on a scav, and then you swap the CSA into here, and then it only takes up 6 slots, and this effectively makes the tea bag this big instead, which is a lot better. This is now 13 slots rather than 9, and this will help you just get a bit of extra loot out of raid so you can make some money or bring some better things out than you had before. But as I said, you're going to want to upgrade this to something else, so anything that's bigger than this that you find in raid, on either a scav or in a box or on a PMC who's dead, or maybe the one that you've killed, just get rid of the tea bag and put that on instead. Now in terms of weapons, there's not a lot of choices at the beginning because as I said, you've only got Therapist and Ragman, and neither of these two sell any guns at all. So the earliest weapons you can get access to is on Skier, and you will have some, as I said, in your inventory, but you might just not want to use those or not feel comfortable with them. So he sells a bunch of different guns, and the cheapest one that he sells here is the Saiga 9. Now, even if you have all of the other traders open, I actually think the Saiga 9 is not a bad choice if you want to have seriously the bare minimum in raids, because I think the Saiga 9 is better than most pistols, and it's only just slightly more. The benefits of the Saiga 9 is that you have dramatically less recoil, but you need to try to upgrade this 10 round mag as soon as you can. Where this comes from is Prapor level 1. As you can see, this takes the PP19 Vichaz mags, so if you buy this, then you can take off the 10 rounder and put this on instead. And this is much better than most pistols. As you can see, the recoil is absolutely minuscule on this, and you're going to be able to stay on target more easily, and it fires the same ammo. It fires 9mm anyway, so you may as well go for this guy. There is technically a way to get a sight on this very early as well. You go into the parts on Jaeger, and make sure you scroll this little bar, because at the moment it's slightly bugged and isn't working, and head yourself down into this vital parts section, and you can buy this, the PP19 Vichaz dust cover, and this only costs 2,000 rubles, so this is really cheap. What you do is you take the back cover off here, because at this point you probably won't have the weapons bench editor, which you need to unlock the workbench level 1 in the hideout to get access to, and then you put the Vichaz on here, and then this will allow you to put on all sorts of red dots and things like that. Some of these you can buy at level 1 traders, not from Prapor, but if you go over to Skier and have a look, you can get something like the MRS, or you can get the Pilad Weaver, and those will be compatible with that rail, so that you can put it on and have a red dot sight rather than trying to use the irons, which I know some people is going to be very difficult. So in terms of utilities and meds, we're going to need a few other things so that we don't just die straight away. Over on Therapist level 1, you'll have access to this, the AI2. I'd probably buy 2 of these. These heal up your actual health. Then you've got S-March tourniquets. These fix heavy bleeds. You've got regular bandages, which fix up light bleeds, and you've got splints, which fix up breaks. You've also got painkillers, which are arguably one of the most important things of all time. You can technically get away without having a splint if you're near an extract, because you can use painkillers so that you can at least walk normally. You can't run without hurting yourself, but you can at least walk normally without using a splint to fix it. So these are pretty important as well. And I just buy 1 of each of these. Now, you should be using this thing, this search bar up here. This makes life a lot easier managing your stash. It's not that bad at the beginning, but later on it makes it 10 times easier, especially when you've got a huge stash full of stuff like I do. So you go into the med section, you can see all the meds you've got available. So what I would do at the beginning, and you use control and click to move stuff out from the item search over into your character. So you do control and click on the AI2, we pick 1 painkiller, we then pick the bandage that we were looking at a second ago, and then the S-March tourniquet that we had there. And this is basically going to give you enough health so that you can survive and heal yourself from about half health up, because this is 100, you've got 440 HP. Put this on a hotkey, which is going to allow you to use it if you get under fire, and a bandage and an S-March up here as well, so you can use these on the fly. I forgot to add the splint in, so we're going to put this here, but this doesn't need to necessarily be on your hotbar, you just need to be able to use this later on at some point. The painkillers are more important to be able to use on the fly, because this fixes the problem of the black leg to the extent where you can actually still move around, and this can be done later. So a couple of things that have changed about 1.0 if you missed out on the hardcore patch is that for a start, meds can now go in the secure container, so for example, you could put a bunch of this stuff in here if you wanted to. The second part is in the special slots, you can now put the CMS kits. You may get some of these in your starting loadout. They could go in any of these slots, and so this saves up a whole set of space in here, which is joyous for alpha container people. And in theory, if you found a grizzly, you could even just put this in here as well. When you're first starting out, the one thing that I would avoid using is any found in raid Salewas or any car first aid kits, because found in raid Salewas are needed for therapists, so don't use those as heals. If they're not found in raid, that's fine, like this, but if they have the little found in raid tag, the little tick on there, don't use them. And car first aid kits just shouldn't be used at all until you finish therapist Salewa quests. You need to give her 3 of them in total. And the reason why is that car first aid kits, if you go into the hideout, these can be made in the med station level 1. It requires 2 of these car first aid kits and 2 of these S-Marches that you can buy, but that then allows you to build Salewas found in raid, because anything that comes out of the hideout, or anything from quests as well, is found in raid, and you can hand that into therapists later. So avoid using car first aid kits if you can until you've done that quest, or until you have enough car first aid kits to make 3 Salewas. So that'll be 6 if you need 3, 4 if you need 2, or 2 if you need 1 Salewa. The one thing that you can't put down in the secure container is bullets, so bullets won't go in there at all at the moment, and so this container is mainly turned into a bit of a lunchbox. You can also use the alu splints if you have any of those available. Rather than using a regular splint, you can just take this with you down here, and you can hide your most valuable things in there. So this means that when you die, you only lose these 2 little pieces, and you can keep the rest of this stuff. Outside of this, you might want to think about taking water. You might want to swap 1 cheese and the S-March over to here because they're relatively cheap, and keep a water in there. One nice trick about the waters is that once you have the water collector set up at level 1, you can actually refill these bottles, so you can drink them in raid down to 1 usage, and then you refill them later, so maybe drink them down to 1 and then save them if you can. But that's only if you've got spare slots and you're not looting anything else. You could also put in some food as well if you want to just keep the painkillers on your hotbar, which I think is probably better, but if you're really down on your luck, you might not want to spend 10k every single raid on these PKs. Obviously, if you have a Gamma, then you're probably going to have stuff to spare, and most of the time at the moment, I'm going in with a couple of slots spare in here, because given that you can't put ammo in there anymore, it's mainly just food and a few meds and that kind of thing, but we'll come on to that a bit later with the bigger kits. Okay, so we are done with the basic kit. This is probably the most basic kit that you could possibly buy. For the Saiga 9, the ammo that you're going to need to use is this stuff here, 9x19 PSO from Prapor. You'll have a load of 9x19 in your starting stash, regardless of whether you're USEC or Bear. And so from here, we're going to basically assume that you've got all of the traders unlocked. This is going to be the next stage of kits. And the first part here that I would point out is really important. And one reason why getting Jaeger unlocked is really critical is because you get access in the weapons section, I don't know why it's a weapon, to this, the RSB-30 reactive signal cartridge in green. You should be buying these every single time you don't have any, and you should be putting them in your special slot, because again, you don't lose them. These are absolutely fundamental because so many maps these days have a green flare extract. The classic one was Streets and Ground Zero, but nowadays Customs, Interchange, and Woods all have green flare extracts as well, and often they're in quite good places and they stop you having to run all the way to the edge of the map to escape. If you don't have any of these and you don't have Jaeger yet for some reason, then you can always go to Ground Zero and nab a green flare out of the body, because once you've put it in your special slot, you get to keep it forever even if you die. So you could go to the body, grab the green flare, because that's the only place where there's a guaranteed green flare spawn right next to the exfil, to kind of teach people, I guess, and then you could either leave out of Emacom or Nakatani, and if you don't make it out, you still get to keep the green flare for using on another map like Streets or Woods. So as we were looking at before, the cheapest headset that you can buy is actually the GSSH, and so once you have Prapor, you can technically buy these. But personally, I would just move up to Skier's M32s. They're not that much better in terms of range, but the compression of the ambient background noise is going to allow you to help hear people run more often than not. And this is my budget go-to headset. I've been using this for quite a lot at the beginning of the wipe, and I used it pretty much all of the hardcore wipe because you weren't able to buy the others. It is personal preference, and I do have a full video with the various headset rankings, but you're just gonna have to play around with it yourself. It depends on your IRL headset as well, and just how you perceive the different sounds yourself. So try a few different ones, and I think the most important thing about it is just be consistent. Once you've decided on a headset that you like, just stick to it and don't move it around. Just keep using the same one over and over again, because that's gonna confuse you and it's gonna mess up your muscle memory as to how far people are and what sound sounds like what. So helmets. Helmets are still in a really difficult spot, even with all of the traders unlocked. If you go through and look at them, they still don't allow you to wear any headsets with them. So the Sphera helmet, for example, nobody ever wears this. The Riot helmet, that one's also terrible. Ragman's ones, the Kiva doesn't let you wear it, neither does the Kolpak. And the tank helmet doesn't either. So the old budget choice used to be the SSH Steel 68, but they took this off as well, so you can't wear headsets with this either. This means that the only choice left that you can actually get access to is this one, which is the Untar helmet on Peacekeeper 1. Now, as far as helmets go, this actually isn't bad, technically speaking, in its stats, because it's class 3, and it also covers the ears as well, so it's actually okay. The problem is, as you can probably see, is the fact that it is bright blue, and it's really obvious. People wearing this stick out like a sore thumb, and they're basically just painting a huge shoot me target on them. So this is probably okay if you're inside or you're playing a map like Factory, or maybe even somewhere like Ground Zero, because a lot of it is like urban interiors and you're not really hiding anyway. But I would just avoid using this if you're outside on woods, on shoreline, probably customs as well. Anywhere where concealment matters a little bit, people are going to be able to track you much more easily with this. But this is really the only contender, but if you're outside, then I just wouldn't wear one at all. This does free up a slot though in case you do find one in raid. The only other place that you might grab one of these is in the hideout. If you go to the lavatory, there is a craft for this. So we scroll down a little bit and there's one here, which is the Ratnik BSH. And this requires an aramid fiber fabric, and these can actually be crafted out of packers. So if you were using packers previously, you can turn packers into aramid in the lavatory as well. There's a craft for that specifically here. This one, which requires a multi-tool. And remember, you can buy the multi-tool from mechanics, so you don't need to find one of these, which is very handy to know. You will have to get a sewing kit to be able to make these helmets, unfortunately. And you need these white tapes as well, but these are really common to find in toolboxes and in filing cabinet drawers. So this allows you to make helmets if you want to. I didn't bother doing this. I had enough personally not to bother doing any of these crafts this white, but if you are kind of trying to look for it, then this one's not bad. This is the same stats as the blue helmet, except it's in green, so you're not going to get spotted and not get shot in the head so easily. So with face covers, we're probably just going to stay with the balaclava if you don't have anything else. You can always swap over to a slightly nicer balaclava on a scav or something, because they do drop those quite often in raid. But it doesn't matter that much as long as you've got your face covered and it's not just shining white in a bush. Same reason as to why we don't want to use the blue helmets. Same kind of reason. Glasses, again, we're just not going to do anything here. It's not worth it at this point in time. And so now we need to upgrade our armor. So we're going to shelve the packer because class 2 really is the baseline in terms of playing, and it doesn't really save you from anything. Even PST out of a Saiga 9 will go through a packer, so is it worth it or not? Against shotgun scavs, yes, but against everything else and players, definitely no. And the best one of these that you can access at Prapor level 1 is probably this, the Kora Kulon, which comes from Search Mission. You have to do his Ground Zero quests first, and then you get Search Mission, where you go into woods and you find the convoy. You can then buy this for 47k. This thing is just 2 pieces of class 3, and that's it, no sides or anything. It's better than nothing. and it is fairly cheap. If you insure this, then it'll come back all the time, because outside of scavs with no armor at all, this is just not worth taking whatsoever. The other two okay-ish pieces of armor rely on barters. This is the 6B23-1 body armor for a propane tank if you find one of those. And the advantage of this is that this is class 3 in a plate with class 2 underneath. I have a full armor breakdown guide video, which I'll link up here if you want to understand exactly about that, because this video is going to be 3 hours long if I go into all the armor mechanics. But basically a class 3 plate over class 2 underlay means the bullet has to go through 2 layers rather than just 1, and that can help in certain situations. The other alternative for this is over on Ragman, and this, you've got the MF Untar. Now, this is in a similar camp to the helmet, except you've got to remember that a rig goes over the top of this. So depending on how big the rig's model is, the blue might not actually be that visible. Give it a little test and see. This one requires 2 max energies, and max energies are quite easy to find on ground zero because there's food spawns absolutely everywhere. And this gives you another class 3. This one, again, doesn't have a plate or anything, so this is strictly worse than the one with the armor plate, because it's just class 3 over the front, but it does have sides this time, so that maybe makes it a little bit better to fight scavs or something. So for now, let's buy our Korokulon. We can stick that on. Remember, you can click these little body armor sections to put this on your player. This helps with gearing up quite significantly. And the rig for now, we're going to just stay with the CSA because this is still pretty good and we're only at level 1 traders. However, we do want to get a different bag if possible. Then at level 1 on Peacekeeper, you can go and buy this MBSS. This does require a hard drive, so look in computers to find these, but hard drives are pretty plentiful. And then you can swap over to an MBSS bag, which is significantly better than the T bag. It's just got a lot more space in it. Like we said before, if you pick up a different rig, you can put the CSA in here, and you can actually now technically fit 2 CSAs in here, or you could fit in something like a bank robber rig off a scav, for example, in there too. Whilst not quite as good as the CSA, it's missing these 2 here. It's only 6 slots for the ability to put 8 in there. So even if you find a bank robber on a scav as well, you can put 2 of them side by side in the MBSS. And theoretically, if you find 2 CSAs, one of them maybe is replaced with your own rig and another one is off a scav, then it makes the MBSS this big, which is 10, 20, 24, which is actually basically the same size as a scav backpack. As before, you want to insure this thing and then be upgrading in raid if you can to the bigger bags. Now, onto the weapon. You have a lot more choices now that all of the stuff is open. I think the next cheapest choice is probably on Prapor. I did a whole weapons guide, so I'm not going to go through this too much. If you want to watch the full level 1 traders weapons guide, that you can go up here as well. I've got lots of videos on lots of different things, given it's the new start of the wipe. But what I've been using is if you've got good found in raid ammo, so this is basically anything that is from PS and above in the 545 caliber, you can use this guy, the AKS 74U. That's a really good solid choice to start with. Slightly cheaper than this, you have the Kedda, which is 21,000 rubles. This has really low recoil, so you're going to want to head tap people with this. It does make it a bit harder to fight against players because you can't really buy good ammo for this at the start, because it's not one of those weapons that's really known for buying good ammo for. Even in the mid game, they only become kind of average. But this is really cheap, it's very fast at ADS, it has nice iron sights, and the recoil is really low. You also have the ability to buy the PP19. This is more like an assault rifle, but with 9mm. This is more like an SMG, although this is technically still an SMG. But it has a much slower rate of fire, 700 RPM, so it makes it easier to keep on target sometimes than the Kedda, which uses all of its bullets very quickly and is better for CQB. This thing is very stable, and it can also take a scope as well. Like I said before, once you have the workbench open, so you need 2 bolts and 2 nuts, and then you also need the multi-tool, which you can buy from Mechanic. You can then do this right-click edit build, and this one technically can take side-mounted scopes, which is what makes it quite useful. One of these is found over on Prapor, which is the EKP802 Dovetail, so you can use the flea market interface to buy it from Prapor for 10k. One thing about that you just want to make sure that you also add this little guy, the Cobra Cup, because this adds 3 ergonomics and it's about 100 rubles or something. So you can have a sight on this. There's other ways of doing it too. If you're not using the dovetail mount, you can use the Vichaz top cover that we used on the Saiga 9, because this is the gun that it was actually meant to be for. And you can use any of the sights that we saw over on Skier, for example. But this gun is quite flexible and really easy to control. We spoke about the 74U already, so the only other choice, maybe if you want to do something longer range, is that at Prapor level 1, you can buy the PSO scopes, so these things for 20k. This fits to anything with a dovetail mount. One of the best contenders for that is probably over on Jaeger 1, which is this guy, the OP-SKS, which is 36k, and this allows you to attach this to the side of the gun up here. You will need an OP-SKS dovetail mount first, and then onto that you can add the PSO. Outside of this, it's difficult to get a 4x scope at level 1 traders. There's one other curious one, which is the VPO-209. The reason why this is interesting is because it's the only weapon really that can take a suppressor at level 1 that isn't a pistol, and this is here. This is quite expensive at 48k, so it doesn't really fit into the budget kits thing. And also I just warn you that suppressor audio distances have been increased dramatically, and so you can now be heard from up to 260 meters-ish rather than the 100 previously with suppressors. So this has devalued this quite a lot in the early game, so I'm not sure if it's worth it anymore, but it is harder to hear where you're coming from rather than just being loud, so I'll leave that one up to you. So let's pop our header in here. Remember to buy some backups. You'll only be able to buy 20 rounders to begin with, and basically just buy any ammo that you can, whichever one is available. It doesn't really matter because you're going to be shooting at faces anyway. Remember, you can go into here and to magazines, so you can find these a bit more easily. And you will want to take a stack of ammo with you. This is the same for the first kit as well. So just take maybe 50 because that's the maximum stack for these guys. And if we go into search for rounds, you can see I've got my stack of 50 PSO here. And as we said, this doesn't go into the container, so you just want to leave it there. Now, these other things are pretty much the same. We're not really going to change this at all. The only consideration that you might make is over on Peacekeeper 1. He sells a slightly better version of the tourniquet. This is the cat hemostatic tourniquet. And the reason why this is slightly better than the regular donut, as people call it, is that it has a quicker use time. So this one has got a use time of 3 seconds, whereas the donut has got a use time of 5 seconds. So the cat tourniquet is technically better, although it is quite a bit more expensive. So you may want to have this one on your hotbar directly, because it means that if you do have a heavy bleed and you need to fix it in combat, then you can fix it up faster than you can with the S-March. Sometimes it's nice to have two. If you do a cat and an S-March, that means the first one's good and the second one's a backup. Okay, so now we're going to move up to the flea market and kind of level 2 traders. We're going to talk about that at the same time. So that's basically starting at level 15, which is where the flea opens at this point, and then level 2 traders, which range anywhere from level 13 up to level 20. At this point, with the headset, you can use basically whatever you like. And so because these are unlocked at level 15, it's really up to you. You can be able to buy the headsets that you want at probably cheaper prices than you can get on the traders in the first place. And you can get the M32 headset at 19k if you just want to carry on using that. I will point out that some of the better ones, like the Contact 5s, are still really cheap because it's early wipe. They're only 40k, and these do really compress the ambient sounds a lot. Maybe just try it out, see what you think. Might be worth the extra 20,000 rubles just to buy one of these guys, or maybe even upgrade to one of the 6s as well, which are only a little bit more than that. Some other notable choices are like the Safariland Liberator. A lot of people don't really like these, but they do technically have one of the longest sound ranges in the game. But as I said before, just fiddle around and find ones that you like, because now you can buy them off the flea, you can just get the same one every single time. Now, unfortunately, most of the helmets open up at level 20, so you can't actually buy these as soon as you get access to the flea market, which is a bit of a bummer, and this counts for the Ratnik and everything else. But over on Ragman 2, you can now barter for the Ratnik helmet here with Bleach. But annoyingly, this is also level 20 as well, so although this barter exists, you're not going to be able to get access to it until the same level as which you can buy some of the best helmets. Now, I am going to show you them here, despite the fact that they're level 20. I think these two are the best value helmets in the entire game right now. This is an absolute steal. 26k, and this one is at 34k. Just choose whichever. These are basically the same helmet. One has got very, very slightly more durability than the other, because one is at 32 and the other is at 30. It makes no practical difference. They both cover the same areas, top and nape. And they do have the ability to attach night vision as well to the front, which is kind of interesting. But the beauty of these is that they're class 4. They don't cover the ears. They only cover the head, top, and the nape, so sometimes you'll get shot in the ears, but I would much prefer having a class 4 helmet that covers just these two parts than a class 3 helmet that covers all three, because if you get hit by most things, even 7.62 T45, you're going to just die if you're wearing a Ratnik, whereas with these, it'll bounce off. So you want to be looking for those bleaches so you can do that barter up until you get to level 20, at which point then you should just start buying class 4 helmets. You can buy instead the LSHZ Lightweight. This is kind of like the TC2000s, except for class 3. I don't think this is worth buying though, because you can get one with ears over on Prapor level 2, which is the regular 6P47 Ratnik helmet. So just buy that from him until you're able to buy them from the flea market, because they're probably going to be a lot cheaper on the flea over there, about 32k. It astounds me still that these are more expensive sometimes than the TC2001, 2002s, but that's just the flea market for you. So ideally, we're going to be wearing one of these. At this point, the face cover is basically your choice. You can use whatever you like. Probably going to use something like a slightly nicer Momex Balaclava, but just keep taking them off scavs and don't worry about it too much. Glasses we're still going to leave blank because, again, it doesn't make that much difference. And now we're going to figure out what to wear in terms of armor. Now, this wipe is slightly different to anything we've seen in the past year, because last time we had the hardcore wipe and it was very different getting class 4 armor. This time we've had Twitch drops for basically 2 weeks and it's inundated the game with class 4 armors. The primary one is this thing, the 6B13 Flora and its counterpart, which I'll show you both of these. There's 2 lines of this particular type. One is the EMR and the other one is the Flora itself. Now, these are purchasable on the flea market, and although a lot of plates are purchasable at higher levels, I think 25 or something for class 4 plates, you can buy these rigs on the flea market level 15. So you can just scroll through, and what you need to do is just have a look and see whether there's armor plates in there or not. Scroll down until you find one that says 2 out of 2. Let's keep going. All right, there's the first one. Right click on it and do inspect and see what the quality of these is. 50 out of 50 and 45 out of 45 is what you should be looking for. This is pristine. This is completely untouched. And so this for 55k is insane. Normally, what I would say is that you need to go through Ragman's quest, you need to get to Ragman level 2, you need to go to Streets, you need to complete Audit, which is his first quest, and that gets you access to one of these every single reset. But with the flea market in the state it's in, and Class 4 armor being as prevalent as it is, it's more expensive to buy it from him, so you don't even need to bother. You can just literally spend your entire time just buying armor off the flea. If you don't want to buy one of those, there are some other choices. The other ones that I've shown previously in my armor video was the MMAC. This is a nice rig, has some good space inside, and it comes with Class 4 plates that are really, really light. You see the whole rig is 5.5 kilos, which is crazy. The monoclete plates are amazing, and as I said, these are only tradable on their own at level 25 and above, but you can buy them inside carriers at this level, and this one that we just looked at was 60k, and that gets you a rig as well, which is really quite nice. Other alternatives is the Banshee. These are all the ones that give you monoclete plates, so that's why I'm kind of focusing on these. So we'll go down and scroll to find one that's 2, so that's 72k. This one even has 3x1s, which is awesome. We've got the Trooper, that's the arena one, and this is the regular one, and these are all over the place because USECs start with them, so they're constantly being flipped on the flea. These are a little bit more expensive, and the reason for that is that the soft armor on them is class 3 rather than class 2. So technically these are slightly better, especially if getting shot at from the front, because a bullet has to go through a class 4 armor and then class 3 armor rather than class 4 armor and then class 2 armor. Another alternative to this is the Thor Concealable. This is very similar because this also is class 3 underneath. This one tends to be a little bit cheaper than the Trooper, but it also does come with much heavier plates. So the Thor itself is actually quite light. If you look at one without plates in it, it's only 1.7 kilos. But the plates that this comes with by default are the Spartan and Mega Ballistics, and these are combined materials and 4 kilograms each. So if you can, swap these out for something else. And I think that's probably why they're much more expensive, because you're basically adding 5 kilograms for not really any reason. You can pretty much choose any of these. There's so many. There's the Interceptor, which is this guy. This one is another very standard, bog standard armor vest. You've also got the ANA Tactical M2 rig. This one is another class 3 underlay. This carrier usually is really cheap, and it's a rig as well, which is not too bad. So this can take all of the class 4 Safi plate type ones. So there's like so many options that you can use. I've been using these guys a lot just because I've been getting them in Twitch drops, to be honest. So we're going to swap to that for the time being. So in terms of rigs, you may just want to keep working with the CSA because it allows you to put stuff in the bag and move it over. There is an alternative though. Once you get to Jaeger level 2, you can then barter for one of these guys, a Splav Tarzan. Unfortunately, like a lot of these things, hunting matches are level 20 locked, so you can't just buy these off the flea until level 20, so you won't be able to get them straight away. But you find them quite a lot in raid, and when you do get to the flea market, these things are incredibly cheap. So this is about half the price of the CSA, and earlier on, I bought some of these hunting matches for like 2,000 rubles. It's really, really dirt cheap at the moment. This pretty much makes the Splav Tarzan the cheapest rig in the game, and it's got decent size in it. One good thing is that this covers the blue on the Blueberry. It's actually not a bad rig for that. But otherwise, you can just keep using the CSA. Now, bags are kind of annoying. Bags are annoying because these are locked to level 25 on the flea market almost exclusively. So this makes them a bit tricky. I'm above that level now, so you can't quite see it. But if you're before that, you're going to have to rely on the traders. And there's a few different ones that are quite good. We talked about the MBSS already, but once you get to Peacekeeper level 2, you can go and get this one, the LBT Day Pack in Multicam. This one is slightly bigger. It's one extra slot compared to the MBSS. And this guy takes a hard drive and a DVD instead. These are both plentiful. You find these all the time, so this isn't too difficult to get. Alternatively, you can also just buy them off Peacekeeper for $211, which isn't too bad. And you can buy them off Ragman as well for 24k. The best bag that you can get early on Ragman 2 is this Oakley mechanism, but for 122k, that is a lot of money. I think you should probably just use this one. Now, this one is a proper insurance boomerang. It's difficult to put stuff in here. Obviously, you can fit a CSA in there, but anything longer, like weapons, don't really fit in this thing. It's a bit tricky. It's great for taking out lots of individual high-value items, though, and only being 30k is awesome. And as I said, you get this back constantly. You get this back all the time. So insure this and you may just end up having it forever. There's one that I do want to point out, which is really good. So you can make Kajuras in the level 1 workbench. And when you're doing that, you can then turn them into these 2 bags at Ragman level 2. I'll show you in the actual inventory because it shows it a bit easier. And I also did one of these earlier just to check and make sure that it worked. But you can buy this, the LBT 1476A, and this is 1 square bigger on the left-hand side than a Scav backpack, which is pretty cool. This is the same size as a Scav BP, so you can just see the difference. So this is 25 squares, which is quite big. There's a white version, which you can get 2 of, and there's a woodland version, which you can get 1 of. Now, this is probably going to become quite important when we go into winter season, which is actually probably going to be happening very soon. So you can be able to buy 2 of these bags and be camouflaged more so than with this one. And Kajuras are really cheap to make. All you need to do is buy 2 sling bags, and you can make that in the lavatory. So that's going to cost you about 12k. So these are really inexpensive and great ones to buy. For the time being, let's just go and get one of these RKPT25s for 30k, because that's a relatively decent upgrade. And now we need to look at guns. So again, I've got a big video about all the different weapons that you might want to try. As a very, very short summary, if you have good ammo for it, the AK-74U will still work really nicely. You don't need to upgrade from this really if you've got anything higher than PP or BT. The alternatives that come at level 2 are the VSK combined with SP5 ammo from Prapor, Over on Peacekeeper, you've got the UMP, which you can buy in cash, and also Match FMJ, which is on Peacekeeper 2 as well, which is not bad if you want an SMG option. And then over on Jaeger, there's a shotgun choice, which is this guy, the MP153, and you combine that with Piranha. This is a dart type shell which blasts people's armor and can be really good in CQB. You're probably going to be using this a lot for the quest setup with Skier. With flea market access though, you do have a lot of choices, so just experiment around, play with what you've got, have a look through the ammo and see what you've got best for, and then try to match the ammo to the weapons rather than the other way around, because that's usually how you're going to be the most effective. Now I was going to put the Marlin in here, just as a little side note. This is the new lever action rifle that you hear constantly through every single raid because everyone's using it right now. But this thing has actually just been nerfed in terms of access. So not in terms of the actual performance of it, but rather than being 45k, it is now 70k, and they've moved the good ammo up from Mechanic 2 up to Mechanic 3. So this ammo here, 308 ME, you now need to basically be level 30 to get access to it. It has 42 pen and 80 damage, so it is amazing. But there is one other way to get access to it as well. You can buy boxes of it at Mechanic 2. Here, which you get 24, and it's for a cowboy hat. Now, obviously, cowboy hats have got really expensive, so this works out something like 6,000 per round, which is a lot, but you do not shoot that many bullets of this thing, so if you're trying to get something like Shootable in Heaven done early, or some of the Bolty quests done early, then you might want to consider it if you're really conserving your shots and taking your time. In a lot of my raids with the Marlin, if I'm not using it to kill scavs, so you probably want to take 2 weapons, shots that I take on PMCs are usually under 10, so it's not actually too bad really, but this will probably settle down once more people get up to the higher levels of mechanic. I'm just going to stick the VSK in here for the time being, and we'll stick our 2 mags up there as well, and we'll buy a bunch of SP5, and we'll make sure that all of our mags are topped up and full, and we've got our spare ammo here. Now, in terms of the utilities that you should be taking with you, at this point, you actually can buy some better stuff. So you can shelve the AI2 medkits as soon as you've completed enough therapist quests to go and buy the car first aid kit. At this point, once you can buy them, there's no reason not to use them. They deal with light bleeds as well, so they're a lot better than having to carry around light bleed bandages at the same time. And usually what I do is I then just have the cat tourniquets and bind these together. At this point, at mid-tier, you're probably also going to want to take at least 1 grenade. You can get VOG 17s for a fuse. There's a nice little barter here over on the mechanic for fuses if you find these in raid. This could be a cheap way to get these VOG 17s, and you're going to want to keep your painkillers on the hotbar as well. At this point, you're probably going to want to have 2 cat tourniquets just in case of any issues. And although this is good here, just in case something happens and you run out, you're probably going to want to buy some proper meds. Unfortunately, all the good ones unlock at level 20 as well, so you are going to have to wait until then. Ibuprofen is probably the best of this particular selection because they have 8 uses each. I know these are expensive, but if you can keep these in your secure container, they last for 280 seconds, which is quite a long time. You just have to bear in mind what the downsides are to each one of these. So you've got ibuprofen, which you have the most uses for. You've then got Golden Star, which has 5 uses, and this one hits energy instead. So this guy is minus 17 on hydration. This one's minus 19 on energy. And then you've got the middle one, which is Vaseline, which is the cheapest usually. And this one kind of hits both, so it's a little bit awkward. So with these ibuprofens, you want to be taking bottles of water, definitely. Maybe even an Aquamari, because they have a lot more water in them than a regular water bottle. With Golden Stars, you're going to be wanting to take food, a lot more food than you normally do. One choice that is really quite good is the MRE. The only issue is it's not very economic, so I've not been doing this, but just something to note, the MREs do give you plus 0.1 energy for 300 seconds, which is honestly quite a lot, alongside the energy that you have here. And this really offsets the negative energy debuff that you get from the Golden Star. So you're going to want to stick whichever one you've decided to choose in here, and then take something else with you. I've been cheaping out, and I've just been using mayonnaise instead. It's quite funny. They are really, really cheap. And they're also the best bang for buck in terms of calories for your PMC. Kind of a disgusting thought, and they do use quite a lot of water as well. But if you just take this alongside regular water, or I've been using an Aquamari in there, then all has been going okay. Remember, if you drink this water in raid down to 1 and take it out, then you can put it back through the water collector. Just try to make sure that you drink 57 or 58, because sometimes your PMC overshoots and drinks the whole thing. If you put in 59, I learned that the hard way last wipe. And with the secure container, this is kind of what you're going to want to take. If you have an alpha, then you're going to want to probably put the food in here, and then you can take maybe like a wallet or a keychain or something else like this. Do remember that the Gingy keychain isn't just a streamer item. This thing is actually a keychain itself, so you can put 4 keys in here. If you find one of these Gingys on a scav, it's very useful to keep because you can put it in your container like that. Super, super cool. And then if you've got the bigger container size, then normally you can just stick these things in here like that. The only other thing that I would say is that you might want to consider having a big health kit like an IFAK or something, or an AFAK in here if you're using the car first aid kit, because sometimes in really big fights, especially if you're using the CMS and you bump into lots of people, you can end up running out with 220 occasionally. It's not worth taking extra on you, but in your secure container, if you do have 1 extra slot, an AFAK or an IFAK sometimes can be really clutch. This is especially beneficial for the bigger maps like Streets or the raids where you just think you're going to be there for longer than normal. Okay, so the final one, the high tier setup. This is going to be with the Flea. We're going to have a few more levels behind us, and we're basically just going to pick an efficient kit that is like the best of the good stuff on a price to performance ratio. So we're definitely going to change over the headset over to something like the Contact 5 or Contact 6s. Just check the prices. They're both actually very, very similar. The helmet, we're actually going to stay with the TC 2002. You can technically upgrade this to a ULAC. In theory, because the black ones are on the flea market. Again, you can only buy these at level 20, but they're about 90,000 rubles. I think that is probably too much if you're looking to save money early on. And one of these 2002s will do just fine at a quarter of the price. For the face covers, you could take something better like a green Shamar if you want. Something cooler so that it goes with the fit, because if we're upgrading our loadout a little bit, then we don't want to look good. Now the glasses, it's up to you at this point whether you take something that is actually armored. The Condors here have an armor class of 1, so they can technically protect you against things like buckshot. They're not that expensive either. They're only 10k on the fleet because there's lots of them that have been dropping in the drops, and they're not that useful, but if you do want to grab them, then you can. So I'm going to stick on a pair of Condors here. Armor-wise, I've been using a whole bunch of different things. It doesn't really matter what you do. You could stick to the same stuff as we've been wearing for the rest of them, like just general class 4s like the 6B13, because they're run-of-the-mill and they work just fine. There's a couple of notable mentions. There is this new armor over on Prepor. This is just a carrier, so it's not necessarily the most efficient, but this does have class 3 underlay, and it also gives you neck armor at class 3. You can just put normal sappy plates inside, so this can be pretty decent. A couple of other notable mentions that I did actually spot when I was just looking around the flea market is that some of the technically higher tier but quite heavy armors are really cheap. So you can buy carriers for the Gen 4 at 50k. There's no plates in them, so you have to source the class 4 plates yourself, and these are 8 kilograms to start with, but this is another way to get neck armor at class 3 whilst having groin and buttocks as well. The only thing this doesn't protect is the arms. Another one that is similar to that is the Redoute M, and these are about 70k now. These were a little cheaper earlier, so just keep an eye out. Maybe these are worth it. They've got 7.7 kilos though. I think the ones on Prepple 3 are better, but unfortunately those carriers can't be sold on the flea market, so until you get there you've got to deal with one of these if you want to go up for something a little bit better. Seems to me this wipe that the meta for getting to class 5 early is going to be using the Corund plate again. The front plate, it appears they've re-added this barter, which is for a golden egg. This means that you have to go to Lighthouse, unfortunately, and pay your 20,000 US dollars, or do the transit to do the quest if you're feeling like a real stickler. Once you do Easy Job Part 1, you unlock Reconnaissance. Once you do that, then you can do this barter here. And I think the golden eggs are going for about 50k, so they're not that expensive. And the beauty of these is that once you have the armor, you can actually put this in the 6B23, which is a cheapo armor that we looked at before. And I know it's class 2 underneath, but so is the Corund, so there's not really that much different. Rigs wise, you can carry on using whatever you like. The other alternatives that I think are actually pretty good are the Thunderbolt. The Thunderbolt's one of my favorites because it is the lightest rig that has 16 slots or more. It is only 0.62 kilograms. This helps you stay underweight if that's what you're interested in. If you want something bigger, then obviously we can go to something like the Azimuts, which are really cheap because they come off scavs, but they are absolutely enormous. They have huge amounts of slots in them, 20 spaces, which is great. Or you could go for something like the LBT, which is pretty expensive. Either this one or this one, they're like 75k. The reason why these are good is because they've got 2x2 slots and they allow you to stack into your bag properly because these are only 3x3. So they can fit in your backpack really efficiently. These are some of the most efficient rigs in the whole game because they have container size of 18 and they only take up 9 in your bag. This really allows you to pack in high density of loot, so it can be efficient depending on whether you're doing a loot run or not. You can technically put it inside this bag like that. In terms of bags, the mechanism actually becomes possible now because bags are at level 20, and on the flea market it's only 45k, so it's under half the price of Ragman, so this is not a terrible choice. This is 32, and I don't think you can get any bigger bags than 32 on the flea because I think the rest of them are flea market locked, but there are quite a few other options. If you scroll down into that kind of mid-tier period, there's lots of these like the T30 backpack, the Gripper 99, you've got ones like the Tri-Zip. These are all 30 container size bags. They don't have the weird segmentation that you get from the mechanism, so that might be worthwhile. It's really up to you. Weapons wise, at this point the world really is your oyster. Again, it depends kind of on the ammo. You might be wanting to run 545, the M4, the Marlin, maybe a DMR, something like the RFB using BCP FMJ. It's really up to you at this point, because the main thing that you're hamstrung by is ammo more than anything else. As for the utilities, as you go up the levels, what you should really be aiming for is to be able to get from Therapist 3 these Caloc B hemostat applicators. At this point, we're just going to chuck all of this away, and I used to use the car kit all the time. But these days, I just go Salewa and Hemostat, and this gives us 3 heavy bleeds in one go, which is really handy. And the great thing about the Salewa is that you can get this a couple of different ways. You can find a paid in raid, you can find EWRs in raid, and what I do is I've been crafting these EWRs. You can get one through the water collector, through these grand juices, you can get 2 for this. So grand juices are 29k. This basically means that Salebas are 15,000 rubles if you're doing this particular craft, which makes them about the same price as car first aid kits, so you may as well take them. The other one is this keg tape one. I think keg tape's probably going to be quite expensive at the moment, so this one's not really worth it right now. But later on, keg tapes will get less expensive as people don't need them anymore, and then you'll be able to make EWRs in here, and you can recycle 1 out of 60 bottles of water to make these, and again, trade these things in for Salebas every reset. So this is going to make the Salebas super, super cheap. Hemostats also used to look really expensive compared to things like the cat tourniquet, but at 16,000 rubles, if you go over onto Peacekeeper 1 and look how much the cats actually are, that's 120 USD. So that ends up being about the same price as a hemostat. So you just may as well go for this. I do keep a pack of bad painkillers just up here in case something terrible happens and my normal painkillers run out at a really awkward time or something like that. You want to keep the grenades. Obviously, you want to keep using these good painkillers. Stuff doesn't really change in the secure container that much, except you probably want to be working towards a docs case. There's a quest called Nostalgia from Jaeger that I just have now. I've not really been working on those ones in Resort for him, but if I go and do that, I can get a docs case, and that allows me to put all sorts of files and things like that inside my secure container. Eventually, you want to upgrade that to a SIC container as well, because that allows you to put dog tags in, but then not certain info items. The docs case and the SIC case do have slightly different items. They have some overlap, but then other items that are like unique to each case, which is a bit weird. The other thing that you want to be pushing towards at this point is the injector case. This you normally get from Chemical Part 4. Therapist gives you one for free. And the reason why this is so good is that this allows you to store injectors in your secure container, which is highly efficient, and they're also really, really, really good. They're very powerful. Propitols give you healing and a painkiller effect for when you're under the cosh. SJ6s allow you to run to extracts, and I've used about 4 of these already to make the timer while I'm completely looted out with stuff. Zagustins prevent all bleeds. There's some alternatives to this. You could either buy Zagustins, AHF1s, or Blue Bloods, but they're probably the most expensive because they add stamina as well. And then you've got ETGs, which give you an immense amount of health. This is 6.5 per second, which is a lot, can really help in combat sometimes. And then you have the get out of jail free card, which is the SJ12. And this thing basically just stops you from losing any hydration and food. And it can stop you from dying if you find yourself suddenly without any energy and no way to find food or drinks. This can then basically just last you the 10 minutes until you can get to extract. The one missing from here is the mule, because I can't buy that at the moment, and the only one I have is found in raid, so I'm not taking that with me. Any of the ones that give you a weight buff, like the 2A2, will kind of do in this slot. Some people use Obdolbos 2 for this purpose, because this gives you a similar weight limit to the mule. The only thing to watch out for this one is that you get health regen of -1 per second, so that's quite a lot. After 440 seconds, it kills you. You want to use a Propitol when you're combining it with this, because that gives you +1 per second, and it offsets it for the length of the Propitol. The other stretch goal that you want to get is the Red Rebel. Once you've got this in here, then you can keep the paracord up in your special slot, and this allows you to get out of all the Red Rebel extracts. This is especially helpful on Reserve, because Reserve is notoriously difficult to get out of otherwise. You either have to go through like the Raider-filled train, which only comes right at the end of the raid, or D2, which is often camped, and so this allows you to get out up at the dome, which is awesome. But there's a few other places that you can get out as well, one of them being on Shoreline, and it's just north of the resort, so it makes it really easy if you're doing a loot run there. This also allows you to get out of Lighthouse as well at the mountain path, so basically along the rocks somewhere between Southern Road and Path to Shoreline. And this can really save you bacon sometimes, because that path is very congested and occasionally you just can't really get out around to Path to Shoreline without getting killed. Red Rebels can be bought on the flea market. At the moment, they're quite expensive, 2.5 million. You can do a barter here for fuel conditioners, propanes, and defuels, but that often ends up being about the same price. Alternatively, you can find them on Sturman and sometimes on Partisan as well if you go and kill them a bunch, but often I end up just going and buying my Red Rebel, and I did this right. One thing to bear in mind for the Red Rebel extracts, as always, is this body armor slot needs to be empty here. You can wear an armored rig if you want, that will work. So for example, this Bagari rig, this is an armored rig, and you can actually get out with this. Like if you have a regular armor vest on like this, you're not allowed to wear that. You have to either chuck it on the floor or put it in your bag to escape out of that extract. So this video ended up being really quite long. Hopefully that covered enough stuff for you to get an idea about what you should be doing for your loadouts. I did try to be as thorough as I could and cover kind of everything. I know we talked about lots of different things along the way. So if you have any questions, then please come to the live stream to come and ask me. We love talking about this kind of stuff there and min-maxing our kits. Otherwise, as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons. And as always, have fun in your raids.